Our guest of the evening, Mr. Stephen Bassett, is with me, and Stephen Bassett is, of course, the leading advocate for ending the 64-year-old government-imposed truth embargo regarding an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. He is the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group and the Political Action Committee X-PPAC, and executive producer of the X conferences as well, and one of our favorites here on the show. Steve Bassett, welcome back to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
Always happy to be with you. Doing fine.
Now, there's a lot going on. Of course, the petition has been getting a lot of coverage. Tell us what the latest is, because I know that they replied, and now you're about to reply back tomorrow. What's going on with this petition to the White House, even?
Okay, now, are your listeners generally familiar with this petition, or should I give them a little background?
Give them a little background, even though I'm pretty sure a lot of them are very familiar. We've got a lot of folks from the last time you were on Skywatchers that signed the petition. But just in case any new folks are listening, give them a little bit of background on this petition.
All right. Around August 20, the White House announced on their website, they didn't make a big deal out of it, that they were going to solicit petitions from the people, from organizations that would go up on the White House website in a section called We the People. And you could then garnish signatures for it. They wouldn't. You'd have to do it. You'd have to do the work. And if enough signatures were garnered within 30 days, there would actually be a response from the administration, from the appropriate office. Formal response. Pretty good idea. They got about 14,000 petitions within a short amount of time. But
that's a pretty
that
good
didn't start. Yeah, it's a good number. But they gave it a 30-day kind of head start so people could get their act together, and then it went active on September the 22nd. And since then, they've gotten 14,000 petitions. Now, here are the rules. You submit the petition, and you register with them. You submit the petition. They send you a link. You got a good 150 signatures. And when you do that, they put it up on the site. It's posted publicly. Until then, it's hidden. After that, you had 30 days to get 5,000 signatures. That would get a response. Now, what happened was so many thousands of petitions were submitted, they kind of panicked. And October the 5th, they increased the threshold for a response from the administration to 25,000 signatures. Too many. They overshot. Probably should have parked it somewhere around 10 to 15, maybe 15. But in any event, that's where the threshold is now. Well, I knew about this in advance. I pre-promoted a petition, got it out there, and it was put up virtually within an hour or two after the thing went active. And it received the 5,000 threshold within 4 days. When they changed it to 25,000, it wasn't retroactive. That meant we would get a formal response. Now, the petition was called the disclosure petition. All right? And it was a straightforward matter. We, the undersigned, strongly urge the President of the United States to formally acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race and immediately release into the public domain all files within the military services and government agencies relevant to this phenomenon. Unambiguous, no room for maneuvering. That's it. Sign it, don't sign it, what have you. The petition has gotten a substantial amount of media coverage. There's been some YouTube videos made about 20, and it's been an excellent initiative. You can get all of that at the information page for the petition, which is disclosurepetition.info, disclosurepetition.info. And there you find what you would have found, the link, right, that led you to the petition directly where you could go and can still do this. There are still petitions up, and there will be more, where you register, you put your email address in, they send you back a password, you log in, sign all the petitions you want, and that's good indefinitely. So that's the rules. That's how it's set up. The disclosure petition, and you can see by going to disclosurepetition.info how much media coverage it's got. It's gotten a lot of attention, garnished 12,000 signatures, which was respectable compared to the other petitions. It was always in the top 10%.
Right.
And as of 2-3 days ago, it received its formal response from the Obama administration. So everything is pretty much right on schedule based on the strategy that was intended from the beginning. Now, once the petition was responded to, the petition was pulled down, and so that's it for that petition. 12,000 signatures, response from the government. What was that response? Well, it's getting a lot of press already. It's going to get more. There is an article, and again, it's linked up on the site, in MSNBC about the response. But let me just give you a taste of the response that came back from the Office of Science and Technology Policy, which is the appropriate office, is exactly the office I expected to respond to this. But it was not a high-level person by any means. The response was initiated by a research assistant. It's exactly what he is referred to in the OSTP personnel list on their own website. So, what do we got here? Searching for ET, but no evidence yet. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll give you a taste. By Phil Larson, research assistant. Thank you for signing the petition asking the Obama administration to acknowledge an extraterrestrial presence here on Earth. The U.S. government has no evidence. Again, I'm going to emphasize those things here, which I know your listeners will find interesting. The U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet, or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public's eye. Now, I like that. This is, of course, nonsense, but the point is I like the way it was phrased. It uses proper phrasing. It refers to an extraterrestrial presence engaging and so forth. And then they go on to say, well, however, that doesn't mean the subject of life outside our planet isn't being discussed or explored. In fact, there are a number of projects working toward the goal of understanding if life can or does exist off Earth. Here are a few, and they mentioned SETI, the Kepler planet search, which is now, I think, it provided a consensus recently that they estimate 500 million Earth-like planets in the, or water-capable, water and liquid form planets in the galaxy, just a mere 500 million, and the Mars Science Laboratory. At last point, many scientists and mathematicians have looked with a statistical mindset at the question of whether life exists beyond Earth and have come to the conclusion that the odds are pretty high that someone among the trillions and trillions of stars in the universe, there is a planet somewhere other than ours that is home to life. But many also noted, however, that the odds of us making contact are extremely small. This is basically about 35 years behind the curve. It is remarkably not crude, but simplistic, and of course it does not recognize at all huge amount of work that's been done and a huge amount that's taken place. However, that's fine with me. Why? This was the strategy from the beginning. Certainly, if the response from the White House had in any way opened the door to this issue by saying anything, it implied that there was more to this, that there was something they knew, whatever, it would have been significant, to say the least. This is the next best thing. What we have accomplished is this. For the first time since this phenomenon exploded on the scene in 1947, we now have a formal written response from the executive branch of the United States on this issue. Believe it or not, there never has been one. The only position that the government has ever really put out was in the form of responses from Air Force, sometimes from NASA, Navy, and what have you. These are kind of form letters that are sent out stating that we no longer investigate the phenomena and we don't consider it a risk, whatever it is. That's not a position, really. That's kind of a statement of action. And nothing from the White House. Now, the fact that Bill Clinton once commented on Roswell while he was giving a speech in Ireland because of a kid's question is not a position from the White House. This is a formal position from the White House in writing, on the record. And according to their own rules, when this was issued, all 12,000 signatories to the petition received this exact response, in addition to the link. And of course, the response is up on the White House for all to see. And if you go to whitehouse.gov and you click on Read the People, you can go to responses, and you can see the response. That means millions of people all over the planet can go and they can watch that, look at it. Here's the response. This is the petition. Now that we have the White House or the administration on record, we have a stationary target. And now the fun really begins. PRG, Paradigm Research Group, will begin its response to the response tomorrow. It will be an international press release, and I'm pretty sure your audience is going to love it. And that press release will also indicate that an op-ed column is being submitted to certain newspapers, starting with the Washington Post, Washington Times, and what have you. And we'll find out which of these papers has got the cojones to print the response. I assure you it will not be crude, it will not be uncivil, it will be an intelligent and thoughtful response to this absurd, outrageous, impossible position on the government on this issue. And now you see we got a situation where we have the White House's petition, or rather position, on one side, all right? And then we have our response on the other, and the press can look at one and then look at the other, and look at one and look at the other, compare back and forth. And so now, more than ever, I think since this whole thing exploded 64 years ago, the media has a clear way to compare what the real position of the government is and what the evidence shows. And the discrepancy will be clearly demonstrated. And thus the potential, because you see, this is a formal position. When you go to the press and you say, well, look, this ET thing needs to be pursued, and they have nothing to compare it to. There is no White House position. They just assume, well, if it was real, they would have said something. Right. Now there is a position, and that gives them legitimate basis to take on the story. No editor in the country is going to demur from a reporter looking into some aspect of this when it's a written position from the White House for all the world to see, from their Office of Science and Technology Policy, whether it's a lowly research assistant or the director, it doesn't matter. And I can assure you, we can shoot holes into this thing all day long. It wouldn't stand up in a court of law for 5 minutes. It's a joke, but I appreciate why they submitted. Now, and I'm getting a little bit into what I'll be saying in the response and possibly in the press releases, but just, because you're the first person I've talked to, really, on the radio since then. So let me give your listeners a little heads up. What we will show very quickly is that there's only a few possible interpretations of this response. There's only a few. One, first of all, it's a lie. Mm-hmm. All right? That's one possibility. It's a lie. But there's two kinds of lies it could be. It could be a political lie. Now, what does that mean? It means that for political reasons, it is necessary that the White House simply deny everything, right, give a boilerplate response about the fact that SETI is out there looking. By the way, SETI is not a government operation anymore, though it's starting to get back. Well, it started to slip back into government money, and so forth, and dismiss it. 60 years of work, 5,000 books or more, thousands of articles, witness testimony, all of it's been compiled, massive amount of evidence dismissed in a few paragraphs. But for political reasons, they're going to campaign. The last thing they want is for this thing to suddenly turn up in the middle of the campaign, though frankly it would be the sanest thing that I think would have turned up in this campaign so far. And so it's a political lie. Second possibility. It's a national security lie. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a little different matter. In other words, still, after 20 years after the end of the Cold War, for national security reasons, it is necessary for the White House, the executive branch of the United States, to completely and utterly dismiss what is obvious to hundreds of millions of people around the world as not being something to even consider, at least in a direct way, because to do otherwise would threaten national security. All right.
Stephen, you also have to keep into perspective here the fact that the White House might not be lying in the sense that they may not know what's really going on. I mean, they might not have information.
You're ahead of me, my friend.
To them.
You're ahead of me. See, that's number two. The first one is a lie, 2 parts. National security lie, or third, or the second. I'll call it the third. 2 lies, now we're going to the third. All right. Third possibility. The White House is completely and utterly ignorant of the entire body of work that's been done on this issue, doesn't have any sense of it at all, wouldn't know Alan Hynek, from a leprechaun, right? Never heard of Edgar Mitchell or Gordon Cooper or any of the politicians and other figures that have spoken out to this issue over the years, knows nothing. And they're simply stating, look, this is it. Now, understand that by responding from the Office of Science and Technology Policy, they're basically saying within the entire scope of the massive structure we have created to monitor, manage science in this country and all of the resources we have, we know nothing about this. All right? An extraordinary statement. But let's assume, so there you have. They just don't know. In which case, of course, we have a White House and an administration that is utterly detached from reality and unable to address issues of great magnitude, no matter if they're sitting directly in the room across from them on the sofa. This is extremely concerning, right? And people should be very upset about that. Possibility number 4, all right? The White House doesn't know enough to be able to say anything because efforts they've made to get information about it have simply been denied by the national security structures on the basis of the White House doesn't have a need to know. And since they can't get the information and they're not allowed to investigate it directly, they are sort of in an impossible position. So they may suspect very much that there's something going on here, but they can get no support from the rest of the United States government. Therefore, they have to take this position to protect themselves. Well, this is extremely concerning in this case. It means that this concept of almost a breakaway civilization, as Richard Dolan puts it, or a secret empire that's operating virtually without oversight from the Congress or the President, it puts the truth to that and should be extremely concerning to anybody in the United States, particularly any member of the political press. The 5th possibility is that there is no evidence, there is no credible evidence. This whole thing has just been a minor misunderstanding, and this is exactly the state of things as put forward. That's it. There are no other possibilities. Those are the 5 possibilities. So if anybody in their mind can eliminate the 5th possibility, that in fact the entire UFO ET reality has been investigated, has been discussed, has been studied, and the testimony from the hundreds of witnesses that come forward is all simply a mistake. If they don't believe that, that leaves them the other 4. And in that case, if they're an American citizen, they should be really, really afraid. So that's the situation that the press is going to be seeing very, very soon. And a lot of press out there know that there's something to this, believe me. But once it's pointed out to them, well, if you really believe there's something to this, do you understand what that means for the nation? And now we can do that because we have them on writing, on record and in print. That was the point of this petition from the beginning. But of course, are we over? Oh God, no. What'll happen after the response and the op-ed stuff is sent out? I will start soon. I have to come up with a final idea, but I will soon put out another disclosure petition. Now, this will be in the disclosure realm, but it will approach it from a different perspective. I'll pre-promote that through all the various resources available to PRG, trying to spread it through YouTube and Facebook and MySpace and all that and Twitter to get people tuned, ready to go. And then we will put another petition up, which will gather thousands of signatures within a day or two. However, the next time around, if we want a response from the government, we're going to have to get 25,000 signatures. So people are going to have to dig down and be committed to taking that 3 to 4 minutes that it takes roughly to go to the White House website and register if they haven't already. Now, the good thing about the second time around is that there's already 12,000 people registered and ready to go, and the petition site is much better known. It's getting more coverage, and of course millions more people will actually know that that site is there, will be visiting it. And so there's a chance that the second time around we will get the 25,000 signatures, and they will have to respond again. In other words, assuming that people are willing to stand up for this, we have them in a corner, we have them in writing, and we can hit them with these things one after another until they finally submit and admit the truth of this matter.
Do you think that really is ever going to happen, Stephen? Do you think they really will submit and come out with everything? Or at least something?
Oh, they have to. No, there's 2 ways this is. There's 2 ways this will go. Actually, there's 3. The United States government will yield and they will disclose. On their own, well, in response to whatever pressure is being put on them, and they will act.
Right.
They will act first amongst nations, and the post-disclosure war will begin. The second possibility, another nation is going to trip the switch. They're going to come forward, head of state. It's going to go to the people, say that's the deal. A couple of the nations will follow. The United States will be in an impossible position, and it will have to follow suit. The third possibility that could happen, and this is, I'm talking about near term now, is that something very bad is going to happen. And there's a really long list of possibilities, unfortunately. You know, what can I say? I'm just a player here. I'm just riding along. You know.
Don't shoot the messenger, everybody.
Yeah, it'll be a nuclear event, terrorist type or whatever, somewhere, anywhere, it doesn't really matter. And it will trigger a response, and all hell will break loose, and things will get extremely unpleasant, and nobody's going to be able to address disclosure for some time to come. It could be a bioterror event, which, if sufficiently large, would have the similar effect as a nuclear event. They're both considered weapons of mass destruction. Mm-hmm. It could be a war, but not just I'm not talking Libya here, I'm talking a serious war that would get started, that would create massive problems, and the response to that would again take us off into darkness. These are the top three, frankly, that we're concerned about, in which case disclosure will be delayed. How long? Could say 5, 10, 15 years, who knows? And our lives are going to become not so nice. So those are the three there are no other possibilities, right? The idea that, no, the government will never disclose, and 100 years from now, they'll still be playing the truth embargo. Not a chance in hell. All right, the truth embargo is virtually at its end, technically. It's hanging on by a thread. It's stumbling, down the street like a drunk. It's falling apart in some ways. And this example here of how bad it is the fact that the White House could not give an intelligent, thoughtful, and comprehensive response to this, but rather put out something that would have been embarrassing 35 years ago. That shows you how weak it is. Witnesses are coming forward. Contactees of note are going to start coming forward. There's already been a few. So disclosure is inevitable. The only question is, will the U.S. do it first? Will another nation do it first? Or will another profound act of human stupidity take place so that we can all go off and spend 10, 20 years doing God knows what and hoping for another opportunity to come out for air? You know, the model, the analogy I love to use is, think of the United States is that little fishing boat in the perfect storm. And they finally made the decision to head east again, to try to outrun the storm and get to safe harbor. But it's awfully late in the game, and they're just really getting pounded, and the waves are getting bigger and bigger. And then there's just one moment where they can see clear sky, they can see blue sky ahead, and there's this sense that we're going to get out of this, right? And then they're plunged back into the storm. Well, we're kind of in that place as a country. We're trying to outrace the storm. We can maybe see some blue sky ahead, but if we don't get rowing really fast, we're going to get dragged back into the storm. And this century is going to become virtually a living nightmare.
Stephen, do you think if another country, like, say, China, for example, started to make threats that they were going to disclose what they know about UFOs and aliens and come clean with everything, do you think the United States might take that as an act of war, and maybe that could trigger an actual war between another big nation like China?
No. First of all, China would not threaten us. They would just do it. They don't need to threaten us. They've already got us under our thumb. I mean, they have all our money. We're totally dependent on their cheap underwear. No, they don't need to do that. And if they did, we're not going to have a war with China. Their army is as big as our country. They have nuclear weapons. It's out of the question. Not going to happen. Well, I mean, it could happen if some rogue guy, what was the name of Jack Tripper, some General Jack Tripper decides to launch his own little war. So that's not going to happen. What will happen, if a nation's going to do it, they're not going to. They might, who knows what goes on back channels in the intelligence world. There's been a lot of things happening which clearly demonstrate pressure is being put on the U.S. by other nations, but not really from China per se. But what's important about China is that they openly, investigate UFOs. It's considered a very appropriate thing to do. There's a lot of interest in the public. There's private UFO groups, and they've been allowing a lot of press out of China regarding events there. So something is up. They're also making great strides in their space program and talking about the moon. They're talking about Mars. They're talking about a space station. They fully intend to become, if not the world superpower, clearly a major player equal to the United States.
Right.
And they're smart enough to know that being the nation that finally ends this truth embargo is going to be a huge legacy and asset for them. The great truth tellers, the Communist Party of China, telling the truth that the United States, the open democracy, the transparent, open democracy, couldn't do because they believe. I can't imagine it, and I consider China the number one possibility right now. I would put Russia or France second, and then Russia or France third, and after that maybe the UK. So this is almost over. And normally we wouldn't be having this discussion if our government had not fallen into such dysfunction over the last since 1964, and that's when I believe the decline of America started. Essentially 47 years. If our government had not fallen into such disorder, there's no way this would be the situation now. This would have been handled. It would have been dealt with. The people would have been given information. There would be a process of unfolding. Maybe things would have been held back, certainly for national security reasons, but we would have learned the truth about our world. But frankly, the government is so incompetent now that it can't do anything. I mean, frankly, it couldn't take a shower. It couldn't toss a salad. It's simply incompetent. And so I don't think so much that, in some sense, they're not picking on the UFO ET issue per se. They just can't do anything at all. So that's unfortunate for us. I mean, this is a tough one. This is not an easy one. And so they can't get the obvious, easy stuff done, right? You need to fix a bridge because people are falling off of it. Well, that could take a couple of decades. We'll work on it. So we talk about, the most profound event in human history being initiated in a thoughtful and appropriate way and allowing the people to know the truth of their world. This, I'm sure, from the inside, looks like an absolute impossibility. It would be like telling, a 200-pound a kid 200 pounds overweight to go out and run the mile under 5 minutes. And they're going, that can't be done, so they don't bother. And so some of it is that, but of course this incompetence and this dysfunction is killing us all over the place. I mean, we're losing everywhere. Our dollar, our education system, our medical system, right? Our balance of trades, our credit rating, you name it, we're falling. I mean, we're literally falling off the map. It's remarkable to watch. It's happened before, many times over the last 10,000 years. For whatever reason, successful societies, kingdoms, empires, whatever the hell, just sort of slip into sort of a catatonic state and just collapse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that happening here? It's certainly the beginning of it, and we don't have a lot of time. And so for me, disclosure is probably the best shot we have to turn things around, frankly.
So post-disclosure, I mean, what would become of the United States of America? Past disclosure, now they have announced everything, or at least they've come clean with some facts. What do you think America would become after disclosure?
Well, that's interesting. Well, that's a hell of a question. I mean, boy, we could definitely spend time on that. First of all, if we don't disclose first, we're going to lose a huge amount of prestige. No question. Right. Politically, geopolitically, just you name it. We're going to lose a huge amount. And the nation that discloses is going to elevate substantially. So right away, that would take a hit. However, we do have one ace in the hole. And this is not trivial. And that is that it's likely that the U.S. has done the most work on the extraterrestrial technology that was studied and is still being studied from crash vehicles, more than any other country. I think that is pretty well, I think there's a reasonable consensus on that. There's strong evidence that somehow or another the Germans, it might even be pre-Nazi, but whatever, the Germans got their hands on a crash vehicle, which of course would have been much more perplexing matter if we're talking back in the 20s or 30s. And they made a run at trying to engineer this stuff, but they had the science of that time. And they did some things which has been, I think, completely overblown into very hyperbolic theories about German saucers and so forth. But I think they did some work. Whatever they did, we or the Russians got it after they lost the war. Then we got there's some rumors we may have had a saucer prior to the 1940s, but we certainly had one as of 1947 in Roswell and possibly Corona. So and then there's evidence for other crashes also after the Cold War gets underway, and we are the number one power representing democracy. It's likely that any extraterrestrial craft crashes within the, how would you say, Western world would have been turned over to us. There's suspicions about one in South Africa. I mean, what's South Africa going to do with an extraterrestrial saucer, for crying out loud? They turn it over to the U.S. So we have been studying those craft and every aspect of them, which obviously includes a lot, but most importantly the propulsion and the energy, in underground facilities, definitely underground facilities, for decades, spending billions of dollars on it. So we probably have the most knowledge. Now that is non-trivial. And so at post-disclosure, whatever the government thinks may happen with respect to that, the idea that they're going to say, okay, yeah, there's ETs, but we don't have anything. We don't have any craft. We don't have any tech. Just leave us alone. The chances of that are zero. All right?
Right.
And so they're going to come under absolutely overwhelming pressure from people, from media, from everybody else. What do you got? We want to know about it. We want to see it, whatever. And so that technology, I think, will come out, and it has the potential to change the world. It has the potential to be the most significant technological paradigm shift in history. I mean, making the transition to the combustion engine look like child's play. Mm-hmm. And that is going to make us very important. And to the extent that we are able to develop it, to make it available to the poorer nations, to license to other nations and whatever, that is going to make us a very important player in the post-disclosure world. So for that reason, I see the U.S. is somewhat recovering in the post-disclosure world. Now, in terms of the dysfunctions of the U.S. government and the problems we have, my hope is that this revelation to the people will once and for all open their eyes. I mean, they will really snap open and go, okay, look, we better start paying attention here. We've got to know what's going on here. No more of this right to know crap. No more of this we can't handle the truth nonsense. We want to know now, and it will trigger a kind of groundswell, which we're already seeing a little of, but not at the levels that are even close to being necessary. But it will trigger a groundswell of reform that could sweep the nation. Now, it could even sweep the world. But so I'm anticipating the possibility that we will see, in addition to learning about ETs, in addition to learning about ET technology, we will see the greatest age of political reform.
I don't think, honestly, we're that far off, Stephen. But I have a question from Facebook from one of our good friends here, Don Smith, and he has a very interesting question. He says, why are aliens only sticking with world leaders as a means to communicate with? I mean, as silly as it sounds, with all the TV signals, why are they just not talking to like Brad Pitt or Johnny Depp or you too? Why do aliens feel the need to go through the government?
Well, first of all, we don't know the aliens are going through the government, or going through world leaders, or having any discussions with world leaders. What disclosure is simply, asking that the government acknowledge the extraterrestrial presence. It doesn't make any assertions about what's going on per se.
Right.
And are they engaging people directly? Yes, for sure. We've had too many reports, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of written reports of contact, and it's been studied extensively. And in spite of what Harvard says, sleep paralysis can't even begin to explain it. And this recent study about what they called it, some other little cockamamie idea they came up with, doesn't explain it. The only thing that explains it is what it is. Right. Which is contact by ETs and humans. Now, for whatever ET purposes they have, that's not the same thing as, quote, dealing directly with the president. So we don't know. And as far as why the ETs don't do this or don't do that, I can't say. Only the ETs know that. Clearly, there's a lot of things they could do, and they don't. We know that they make crop circles. Right. Not all of them, but they make some of them. And people say, well, how do you know they make some of them? Well, because they keep putting them in the same place in the UK, And so year after year, more and more people show up there because it's pretty cool and they want to go see what's going on, and they continue to lay them down in the same fields. And so guess what? People are starting to see them laid down. They're flying in the air over these fields looking for them, and they'll fly by and there's nothing there, and then they'll fly back 10 minutes later and there's a 800-foot wide crop circle. Anybody know any college kids that can lay down a crop circle in 10 minutes? I don't think so. So yeah, they make crop circles, but why don't they put a ad on the television? Don't know. Why don't they land on the White House lawn? I don't know. I can speculate on that, but we don't know. Only they know. So we just deal with what is going on, and what is going on is they're not making full-out formal contact. They're not engaging, as far as we know, world leaders. They're doing whatever they're doing. So
Right.
Until we know a lot more, what more can you do except at least acknowledge that they're here? And whatever they're doing, we're not going to learn about it until at least we know it's been confirmed that they're here. Until then, any efforts to try to understand this are simply too difficult.
Right.
There's no money.
Yep.
There's no support. The government denies it. It's just absurd. It's like trying to play football with a 1,000-pound weight on your back. You can't do it. So disclosure is essential to opening all of this up. Until we get that, we're not going anywhere.
Just for Don Smith, who asked that question, an interesting question, but he seems to forget that, celebrities have also come out and said they've had abduction scenarios happen to them. Sammy Hagar, I mean, this is not a member of U2, but he's a member of a very popular band from the 80s, Van Halen. He's come out saying that, he had an abduction 20 years ago. So it's
he said he'd been having it when he was a kid. I mean,
right.
This is the next major development. We're going to start seeing some celebrities come out. Once a few come out, it becomes less stigmatized, and before you know it, who knows? And celebrities may include not just sports stars or entertainment stars or movie or music people, but it could mean well-known figures, possibly in politics or former government people. But yeah, it's only a matter of time. They're going to start coming forward. But again, that's them coming forward. That's not the ETs.
Right. No, and even in politics, like you said, Kucinich, a few years ago, of course, admitted that he had a sighting. Dennis Kucinich.
He just recently acknowledged it. Actually, that was you're right. It was a few years ago. It was during the campaign of 2008.
Right.
But he was forced to do it by Shirley MacLaine. He didn't do it voluntarily. But that's a sighting. It was a significant sighting. But that's not the same thing as and Kucinich is not a major player. Let me tell you, if a major movie star, A-list, were to come forward and say, "Look, I've been dealing with this since I was a kid," all hell would break loose. So again, there's just so many ways this truth embargo is vulnerable now, and that's something to expect. So I'm fully expecting that to happen.
One person who I always thought would love to have had an encounter is Larry King. Larry King, of course, loves the subject, and it's a shame that he's retired because he really promoted the subject a lot on his show. I think a lot of mainstream America kind of got hip to ufology thanks to shows like the Larry King Show, so he's kind of owed a little bit of gratitude for the show itself.
He did a lot. He's still not fully retired. He does specials. He could do another special on ETs anytime he wants. Hello, I don't know his current. I don't know if he has a formal producer now. He probably has an assistant, but I had a line to him when he was working on CNN, but not now. But he should jump back in. I don't know if he fully understands just the contribution he made, but he made a significant contribution, and so far his place has not been taken since he left. So we lost a serious amount of outlet, but there's other stuff coming along. So the media coverage of this will continue to grow.
Yeah, no kidding. And Stephen, what's in the near future for you? What are you working on next with the Paradigm Research Group? What's in the cards for the next few months?
Certainly, the disclosure petition process will be of major focus. Again, there's a whole lot that can be done with this current White House response to the first petition, and work on that. Then I've got to pre-promote the next petition, and then, of course, launch that and drive it really hard. Because, again, if you putting a petition up is meaningless if the signatures aren't there. So we're going to try to put a second petition up that will be not the same. It'll be different, but it'll be relevant and important and designed to appeal to a pretty broad audience. And we'll see if we can get 25,000 for that, and then I'll have to respond again. which I'm sure, they don't want to. Trust me, they don't want to have to respond to any of it.
It's quite a cat
so that's
mouse
another
game, isn't
major
it?
project. And then the World Disclosure Day, still working on that. We're approaching 5,000 endorsements, worlddisclosureday.org, to get people geared up to really engage the issue next year, July the 8th. That's the Disclosure Day, designated day, in whatever way they want. They can have conference, they can do concert, media event, whatever. It's activism, I don't know, March in Washington, whatever. But that's the idea of having World Disclosure Day, our day. Earth Day, Earth got its day. Disclosure needs its day, and that's July the 8th. So we're developing that. Our next step is to get some celebrity endorsements, which could happen, and just increase awareness. But again, we've got 5,000 endorsements right now. We've got a page up, and it looks all good. So I'll be working on that. I will be speaking at the next Conscious Life Expo in February. That link is up. That's the big one, early at LAX Hilton. And there'll probably be some other, the end of the year conference is kind of dry up a little bit. And I'm also doing a lot of work in Hollywood and LA to try to build some network into the film community. And some progress there, without question, and the potential for a film is there. So there's plenty to keep busy.
Very nice. Stephen, thank you so much for appearing on the show tonight. We, must speak again and have you back on the show here in the very near future. I mean, definitely consider you a friend of the show, and love having you on the show, my friend. Thank you so much again for appearing here.
Absolutely, and remind your listeners, disclosurepetition.info, if you want to stay up on the whole thing, the whole shebang, and then worlddisclosureday.org. Those are the two referendums that are ongoing and will stay ongoing.
There you go, guys. The great Mr. Stephen Bassett. Thank you so much, sir, again.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelo. Appreciate it. Look forward to talking again.
Take care, sir.